goals for the season?
So kind of as a sim racing team, we do these sport consultant meetings, and at the beginning of the year, we kind of get together as a big team, and we obviously make a big group goal. And this semester, our goal was to win everything. We wrote on the board in massive font, "Win everything."
It looks like it is going to be a Kale Davidson.
My name is Kale Davidson, and this is my Beyond the Game.
As Kale Davidson, the number 2 car from Ball State University, is your leader on the final lap right now as it comes down to the last couple of corners.
I was gonna say something stupid like born and raised in Indiana. No, that's very dumb. I was born in Indianapolis, but I've lived most of my life in Brownsburg, Indiana. So I consider myself Canadian because my dad is actually a Native American, but my mom is actually born and raised in Canada. So based off of that, I do have Canadian citizenship. I race with the Canadian flag more for the part that, yes, I am a dual citizen, but I think Canada's just better in general. And plus my teammates from Singapore, so it at least makes me feel a little cooler about myself. So my childhood, it wasn't anything too extravagant. It was really good childhood. I have great parents, great home, never really had to worry about too much. The only problem I'd say that really occurred in my childhood was myself. I was a little clumsy, you can say. I kept throwing myself down the stairs and I tripped a lot, so I was always in the ER. There was one time in like elementary school where I was riding my bike, and it was like a bigger mountain bike and had like some 2-inch wide tires, and I ended up splitting my toe kind of on the tire, and I broke it in about 5 places. And on our way to the urgent care place, there happened to be 2 tornadoes that same night, and I ended up spending that night in a cabinet after breaking my toe in multiple spots. It was pointing like this, and it was a big toe. I was like, as soon as we were backing, my mom was at a funeral too when I had to call her that yeah, it was a fun night. And my family really shaped me who I am today. I've always kind of grown up like never being too cocky and always respecting people and kind of just accepting everything the way it is. And one thing that I've also kind of learned from that is to never take anything for granted. I'd say the influences that probably got me more into racing was definitely my sister and my dad. Once I started getting to the age where I was kind of respectful and like grateful for everything, I started to see like their side of like what they've achieved doing their sport and kind of like how cool it actually was. And then that's where I kind of started to get that same drive, and that's where I wanted to kind of follow in their footsteps. My sister means a lot to me because we are very different people. Honestly, through all of our school years, we never really got along. We fought a lot when we were kind of kids. So we have very different interests, and the way that we do things is very different. But for some reason, now even though it's such polar opposites, it seems to go together very well. We've grown up together, and we're both entering adulthood, and you can't just be strangers with the people that are in your own family. So finally, like, kind of getting closer with her and then becoming real good friends with her, that's just something that I really value. I guess you could say I was a multi-sport athlete at that time. I did everything from the range of soccer to baseball. I was a football player. None of those worked out, so I ended up doing swimming and diving. Now, coming into college, I'm not diving anymore, so I've decided to take on gymnastics with the role of that. With diving, it's just kind of you on the diving board, and especially at state and in state settings, it's dead silent, and there's just people staring at you. So being able to kind of focus and stay locked in like under that pressure where there's just a ton of people like watching and you feel like you have a lot of weight on your shoulders, that's with that diving aspect, it really helped me be able to lift that off and not focus on that. So I'm able to use that in sim racing because I can just focus on what I need to get done and not have to worry about kind of the other outside factors that kind of play in. I'm very good at flipping. Kind of growing up in a racing family, like my dad raced cars, my grandpa raced cars, my uncle races, so there's a lot of racing that kind of happens, and I'm always at different types of racetracks, different events, all that kind of stuff. I kind of got worn out of that. I never had too much of an interest to drive. I didn't necessarily want to be in a race car at that point because I spent so much time around them. I think it was around the time when I turned about 16 to 17. That's really when I started like wanting to get the urge to kind of, go fast. So once I turned that 17 is when I started go-karting. Ever since then, I've really just had a drive to really drive anything I can get behind. So professional karting, essentially it is the first step that a real driver would kind of take to get down the fundamentals of racing. You're about centimeters off the ground and you're going around 70 to 80 miles an hour. The type of racing you kind of get with karting is very close and very competitive. When it comes to actually showing off driver skill, it doesn't matter if you can outbrake someone, it doesn't matter if you have a faster engine or so. It solely depends on how good of a driver are you? Can you hit the corners? Can you brake late enough to make the corner? Can you stay in a draft? Can you keep a consistent line? My dad works for an IndyCar team, obviously. So around my freshman year of high school, I kind of hit him with a question. I'm like, hey Dad, like, do you guys need any help? Like, what can I do? I just want to be around this kind of stuff. And he was like, yeah, go ahead, like you can help out. And at that point I was doing the kind of work where you were taking out the trash, you were kind of cleaning the body work. You weren't necessarily doing a whole lot, but I still really enjoyed it just because I was able to be around the cars at that time. So the first driver that I actually got the opportunity to work with was Santino Ferrucci. We were at Mid-Ohio and he was like, hey, can you go check the tires on my BMW? I think I ran over a nail on my way in. Here, hop on this little Honda Grom, which for you guys that don't know, a Honda Grom is essentially a little moped scooter and not very big. And Santino Ferrucci is a very small guy. So you have me, who seemed like I was double his size. I'm riding on the back of this little Honda motorcycle going to check the tire pressure on Santino's car. Kind of from that first experience, Santino he's a great driver, even though he's with AJ Foyt now. Really just respect who he is. The second driver I worked with, his name's Graham Rahal. I only did one single race with Graham, and I was kind of terrified because back at home, I work at Graham Rahal Performance, which is a business that Graham runs. It's kind of funny because even though I worked for Graham, I was terrified to be on his crew team for an actual IndyCar race. For the third driver that I worked with, I did the most time. It was Christian Lundgaard, and this is the car where I was able to do a lot of the front-end mechanic work. It was actually Christian's first year doing IndyCar, and he ended up getting Rookie of the Year for that year. Christian's just a funny guy. I really just like who he is. He's a great driver, great attitude, and just someone who's always super fun to be around. There has been opportunities where I've driven multiple Porsche Cup cars. I've driven multiple supercars. The most expensive car that I've ever driven is definitely a McLaren P1. Sold for around $2.2 million. It was an exposed carbon blue, and the farthest place I drove it was I took it from our storage unit and I drove it to the gas station and I drove it back to our storage unit. I thought hypercars were overrated, and that McLaren P1 showed me that hypercars deserve the hype. The only series where I've competitively raced, I would say, is just karting. We've had multiple different just type of GT3 or Super Trofeo cars, and anytime you get into those, it's such a surreal experience. So getting the opportunity to just drive those cars just really makes you want to be able to just jump in and go take one out on a racetrack and race other people with it. So that's something that just really pushes me that I want to get to there at one day. First week of college ever, and I just see a poster and it says tryouts, iRacing, and it had a date on it, and I'm like, what's the worst that I have to lose? When I came to try out for esports, we can just say I wasn't very confident. Working with Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, and RLL, I knew after the fact that I already committed to Ball State that they just offered 2 drivers scholarships for sim racing. So when I walked in to do my tryout and I see these 2 very good sim racers are the ones who are critiquing me, that dropped my confidence a little bit. I'd never been on a sim to this level. I had just like a little wheel table thing that you can just set up and kind of drive with your Xbox. Honestly, just sitting in a racing seat was something different that I've never driven a video game with. Obviously, I didn't want to crash during the tryout, so I wasn't pushing the car to the fullest potential, but each lap I was doing, I was pushing more and more. And I think on my last lap, I was like starting to figure out how much the car could actually turn. And then at that point, that's where I was told, all right, you're done, and then to let the next people try out. I learned a couple months after I got kind of brought onto the team. The reason why he brought me onto the team was because before tryouts even started, he saw that I signed on to one of the computers and was just trying to mess around on the sim and get comfortable with them. And Alif said that he saw me on there already practicing, and he thought I just deserved a spot from that. Now I have the privilege to go to my classes, sometimes even in between my classes, just come into the Esports Center and knock out a couple races, start doing some laps, and it's something extremely fun that it's paying off, and that's not at all what I was expecting that college would be like. Having the opportunity to kind of drive and get that rush of adrenaline and being able to do it in between classes is just something extremely exciting. I started racing about halfway through the fall semester is where I really got enough pace to be competitive enough. I was good enough to get to 7th place overall, so getting 7th place in the end of that season, I had a baseline to where I could kind of start working off of. It went a lot better than I expected, and I ended up getting 2nd, right behind Alif in that championship. Just from there, I think I'm still on the incline, but I still want to be aiming for that highest potential, because this year I was aiming to get 2nd place again in the championship, and I've been in 2nd the entire year. 2nd is still the first loser. So something that I kind of want going into the next year, setting those kind of goals. I want to be battling every single race. I don't want Alif to kind of have an easy race. And so I know the only place I can aim is I got to beat Alif sometime. If you ever want to watch our races, you can find those at the Collegiate iRacing League on YouTube and Twitch. And make sure to check out Ball State University on Twitch. And if you want to follow us on socials, that's going to be BSU Esports.